Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at a pretty dark story.
Yeah,
The story of Luis Garavito.
definitely a dark one.
You know, you might not have heard the name before, but uh, his crimes
Oh, yeah.
are truly horrific. We're talking about a man who might be
Uh-huh.
the most prolific serial killer
Yeah.
in history.
At least
Yeah, at least 193
confirmed.
confirmed murders.
Yeah.
Young boys mostly, and potentially responsible for hundreds more.
Yeah, I mean, the estimates, I've seen some estimates go above 300. It's really hard to know.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And the crazy thing is this guy almost walked free in 2023.
Yeah, that's what's really disturbing about this case. I mean, obviously the crimes themselves are horrifying, but the fact that he almost got out, just boggles the mind.
Yeah, so to try and understand how this could happen, we're going to be taking a look at a few different sources.
Okay.
Primarily his Wikipedia page, but also a deep dive by the Casual Criminalist on YouTube, and then just a couple of other news snippets that we found along the way.
Okay, sounds good.
So what makes this case, I think, even more disturbing is the setting. We're talking about Colombia in the late 20th century.
Right.
So imagine a nation grappling with rampant poverty, decades of brutal civil war, and the ruthless grip of drug cartels.
Yeah, and in this environment,
Yeah.
this chaotic environment, there was this concept that emerged. They called them disposables, and they were referring to
Oh, wow.
the homeless street children who were basically seen as expendable by society. I mean, it's just tragic.
Jeez.
And their disappearances often went unreported. It was like nobody even cared. So for somebody like Garavito, it was just open season.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying to think about. It's a reminder, I think, of the blind spots that can exist in society,
Right.
especially during times of turmoil. So, Garavito, like many serial killers, claimed to have endured a horrific childhood, violent alcoholic father, even alleged sexual abuse by a neighbor.
Of course.
Right.
But
It's-
I think it's important to remember that serial killers are often master manipulators.
Yeah.
And they might be embellishing or fabricating aspects of their past, either to garner sympathy or even to derive some kind of twisted satisfaction from telling these stories.
It's a chilling thought.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so how do we sift through the truth and the lies? I mean, what we do know for sure is that Garavito's accounts paint a picture of a descent into alcoholism. He even attempted suicide at one point, claiming that his life was worthless.
And that's something we see often with serial killers.
Yeah.
Alcoholism often acts as a disinhibitor, fueling their darkest impulses.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they use it as a justification for their actions.
A way to escape responsibility for their actions.
Up to them and out.
Yeah. It's terrifying to think that, alcohol could be that gateway to such horrific acts.
It's a powerful drug for sure.
Yeah. Interestingly, in Garavito's early years, there are signs that he was actually trying to suppress these urges, seeking solace in religion, even undergoing therapy. He joined Alcoholics Anonymous. He found comfort in Pentecostalism.
Right. But at the same time, you see this other side of him emerging. He develops a fascination with figures like Campo Elias Delgado, who was a Colombian mass murderer.
Okay.
He starts delving into Satanism, even Nazism.
So it's like he was trying to rationalize his darkness by...
He was drawn to the darkest corners of humanity.
Wow. And his early crimes, while they were violent, they weren't initially homicidal. There were these attempts at assault, these instances where he managed to control his urges. But over time, the violence escalated.
You see this progression.
Yeah.
It's like a slow burn that culminates in just unimaginable horror.
And by 1992, Garavito's crimes took a sinister turn, transitioning from assault to murder. And his modus operandi was truly shocking. I mean, we're talking prolonged torture, mutilation, and even necrophilia.
And these details, while disturbing, they're actually very revealing.
Right.
They suggest this deep-seated sadism, this need to exert absolute power and control over his victims. The mutilation often involved removing specific body parts, placing objects in certain places.
Right.
It speaks to this desire to dehumanize his victims.
Yeah.
And leave his signature on his crimes.
It's a level of cruelty that's just hard to fathom. And chillingly, there were instances where victims actually managed to escape Garavito's clutches.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine the strength and resilience it took to survive something like that?
Yeah, you have to wonder what happened to those people after that.
Yeah.
It must have been
just horrific.
horrific, but they're lucky because most of Garavito's victims were never identified.
Yeah, their stories are lost to the shadows. It's just tragic.
Yeah, their stories, their lives tragically reduced to statistics. And it raises the question, could more have been done to stop him sooner? I mean, the investigation itself was a long and winding road.
Oh,
It started with the discovery of these mass graves in 1997 containing the bodies of dozens of children.
imagine the scale of that investigation, the number of victims, the geographic spread, the limited resources that they had.
Right.
It must have been like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Yeah. And to make matters worse, there were all these missteps along the way. I mean, the police even arrested the wrong guy at one point. A known sex offender named Pedro Pablo Ramirez Garcia.
Yeah, and the Garcia arrest highlight the dangers of tunnel vision in these investigations,
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with these high-profile cases. Immense pressure to find the culprit.
Right.
They focus on a suspect who fit a certain profile without thoroughly examining all the evidence.
Right.
And it led to a tragic mistake.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder, I think, of the importance of due diligence. For sure.
And the presumption of innocence.
Absolutely.
But amidst all this chaos, this determined detective named Aldemar Duran.
Yeah, I mean, he was incredible.
Yeah, emerged. And he
relentless.
Yeah, he meticulously pieced together the clues, the rope fibers, the empty brandy bottles, the patterns and the crimes.
Right.
And he refused to give up. He was like a shadow.
Always one step behind.
Yeah, always one step behind Garavito.
Slowly closing the net.
Slowly closing the net. And that persistence paid off in a pretty unexpected way, I think.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah, so in April 1999, Garavito was apprehended, but not for murder.
Right.
For the attempted assault.
Yeah.
Of a 12-year-old boy named John Yevon Sabogal.
And it was really just sheer luck combined with the incredible bravery of this 12-year-old girl.
Wow.
She managed to misdirect Garavito and alert the police.
So Garavito, thinking, quickly gave the police a fake name claiming to be a local politician.
Of course he did.
But the police were already suspicious.
Yeah, they had a description.
And Garavito had made a crucial mistake. In his haste, he had left behind this trail of evidence.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did he leave?
They found his glasses, his shoes.
Oh, wow.
Even a receipt with an address on it.
And so that led them to a woman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She had been holding a bag for him.
Yeah.
And you want to know what was in that bag?
Yeah, what was in the bag?
Photos,
Yeah.
receipts,
Jeez.
journals detailing his crimes.
Oh, my God.
It was horrifying.
So they had him dead to rights.
Yeah, at that point,
Point.
it was over.
Yeah. So faced with this overwhelming evidence, Garavito finally confessed in October of 1999, admitting to the murder of around 140 children.
It was a confession that shocked the nation
Yeah.
and exposed the true depths of his depravity.
So you would think that, such a confession,
Right.
such a horrific litany of crimes would lead to swift and severe justice.
Yeah, you would think so.
Right.
But that's not what happened.
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah. Initially, he was sentenced to 1,853 years, the longest sentence in Colombian history.
Oh, wow.
But due to a series of legal loopholes and this shockingly lenient good behavior clause, his sentence was drastically reduced.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Wow. And the outrage, I'm sure, was palpable.
Oh, yeah, victims' families.
Yeah.
The Colombian public felt betrayed by the system.
Right.
It was like they were prioritizing the rights of a monster over the memory of his victims.
So while he was incarcerated, Garavito spoke of his plans for the future. He expressed this desire to start a family,
Can you believe that?
become a preacher, even enter politics.
I mean, it's mind-blowing.
It's crazy.
It just shows you the complete lack of remorse.
Yeah, it's chilling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it raises the question, can individuals like Garavito ever truly be rehabilitated?
That's a question for the ages.
Yeah.
We'll dive into that a little bit later.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Good question.
Yeah. So we'll delve deeper into all of that in just a moment. But first, let's just take a minute and gather our thoughts.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
It's really hard to grasp the mind
Mm.
of someone capable of such monstrous acts.
Yeah.
But, understanding the psychology of a serial killer like Garavito is crucial. I mean,
Right.
not to condone his actions,
Of course.
but to learn from them
Right.
and potentially prevent future tragedies.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that struck me was his fascination with other notorious killers,
Right.
like Campo Elias Delgado. Why do you think those figures held such appeal for him?
Well, I think he saw them as role models in a way,
Uh,
uh, seeking validation and inspiration from their acts of violence.
it's almost like he was looking up to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He wanted to be like them.
Yeah.
He craved that notoriety, that infamy.
Yeah. And he even talked about wanting to commit a mass murder in front of journalists.
Right, dying in a blaze of glory. It's like he wanted his crimes to be seen to make a statement.
It's pretty narcissistic.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's also this deeper psychological aspect to consider.
Oh.
I mean, by aligning himself with these infamous figures, he was trying to elevate himself, in a sense, to transcend the boundaries of morality,
Right.
achieve this twisted form of power.
So it wasn't just about the notoriety, it was about
It's about power and control.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us back to his victims.
Right.
The children whose lives were tragically cut short. Can you tell us more about their stories, their backgrounds?
Well, it's crucial to remember that each of Garavito's victims was an individual.
Right.
A child with hopes and dreams for the future.
Yeah.
They came from diverse backgrounds, but they were united by their vulnerability, their innocence.
And many of them came from impoverished families, often living on the streets.
Exactly.
Already facing hardships before.
Right, and Garavito preyed on that vulnerability,
Yeah.
using his charm and his calculated manipulations to gain their trust.
Yeah. He would often lure them with promises of money sweets or even drugs.
Yeah, and he would disguise himself as a priest or a beggar or a disabled man
Right.
to appear harmless.
It's crazy.
Yeah, he understood their needs, their desires, and he exploited them ruthlessly.
And he would often walk for hours with the child.
Right.
Hiring them out.
Wearing them down.
Leading them to a secluded spot. And then
usually in a field or a forest.
the details are just incredibly disturbing.
They are.
But they offer crucial insights, I think, into his psyche, the prolonged torture, the specific methods that he employed, the mutilation.
Right.
What do all of these things tell us about Garavito's psychological state?
Well, the level of sadism in his crimes is indicative of a deep-seated psychological disturbance. The prolonged torture suggests this need to exert absolute control,
Right.
to inflict pain and suffering
Right.
as a means of asserting his dominance.
It's like he's getting off on it almost.
Yeah, exactly.
The power.
The power. And the mutilation, removing specific body parts, speaks to this desire to dehumanize his victims.
To make them less than human.
Exactly,
Yeah.
to erase their individuality and reduce them to mere objects.
And he also kept souvenirs.
He
of
did.
His crimes.
Photos, ID cards,
Yeah.
even receipts. Why do you think he did that?
It's bizarre.
Well, it's a behavior known as trophy taking,
Uh-huh.
and it's common among serial killers.
Right.
And these trophies serve as tangible reminders of their crimes.
Uh-huh.
It's a way to relive the experience,
Yeah.
to reinforce that sense of power and control.
Wow. So for Garavito, these souvenirs may have served as this twisted form of documentation,
Yeah.
a record of his conquests.
Exactly. I mean, it's just horrifying.
Yeah.
It really highlights his complete lack of empathy and remorse.
Yeah. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about the investigation. We already touched on some of the challenges that authorities faced.
Right.
But I want to delve deeper into the missteps that occurred, particularly the wrongful arrest of Pedro Pablo Ramirez Garcia. What lessons can we learn from this mistake?
Well, the Garcia arrest highlights the dangers of tunnel vision
Right.
in investigations, especially when you're dealing with high-profile cases and intense public pressure.
Right.
They want answers,
Yeah.
and they want them now.
Yeah.
And Garcia fit a certain profile,
Right.
a known sex offender with a limp. But the police were so eager to close the case that they failed to thoroughly vet the evidence.
They wanted to get it done.
They did.
Yeah.
And they made a mistake.
Yeah. So their desire for a quick resolution blinded them to other potential leads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that justice must be pursued with diligence
Uh-huh.
and objectivity
Yeah.
to ensure that the innocent are protected while the guilty are held accountable.
It's that balance.
It is.
Yeah. Finding that sweet spot.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. And it's also a reminder that the pursuit of justice should never come at the expense of due process and the presumption of innocence.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I want to talk about the victims.
Yeah.
Their stories are often overshadowed by the focus on the perpetrator.
Yeah,
But can you share a little bit about their lives,
of course.
their hopes, their dreams? What were they like?
Well, it's essential to remember that each of Garavito's victims was a unique individual,
Right.
a child with a story to tell. And they came from diverse backgrounds,
Hmm.
but they were united by their vulnerability, their innocence,
Yeah.
and their tragic fate. And while we may never know the full extent of their stories, it's crucial to honor their memory,
Of course.
to remember that they were more than just statistics in a horrific crime spree.
And their families,
Well-
they must have been devastated.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine the pain, the anguish of not knowing what happened to your child, only to discover their fate in such a horrific way.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's unimaginable.
Yeah, and the ripple effects of Garavito's crimes
Yeah.
extended far beyond the immediate victims, leaving this indelible mark on countless families and communities.
Yeah, across Colombia.
It's a reminder of the lasting trauma
Right.
that these acts of violence can inflict.
Yeah. So let's talk about Garavito's capture.
Right.
It was this combination of luck, good police work, and the incredible bravery
Oh, yeah.
of a young boy
And a 12-year-old girl.
and a 12-year-old girl. Can you walk us through the events that led to his arrest?
So Garavito, despite his meticulous planning, wasn't infallible.
Right.
He made mistakes.
And this one was a big one.
A big one, yeah.
Yeah.
So in April of 1999,
Mm-hmm.
Garavito attempted to assault a 12-year-old boy named John Ivan Sabagal.
Yeah.
But Sabagal fought back,
Wow.
and his cries for help alerted a nearby 12-year-old girl.
It's amazing how even in the face of terror, these children had the courage to resist.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
So this young girl, recognizing the danger, she cleverly misdirected Garavito,
Uh-huh.
leading him away from Sabagal toward a group of people who could help.
So it was quick thinking and courage.
Yeah. A combination of both.
That set the stage for his capture.
Yeah.
Wow. So Garavito, realizing that his plan had been foiled,
Right.
tried to flee.
But in his haste, he left behind crucial evidence: his glasses, his shoes, even a receipt
Oh, wow.
with an address on it.
And that's how they found him.
It is. That trail of evidence led police to a woman who had been holding a bag for Garavito.
Oh, right.
A bag containing a treasure trove of incriminating items.
What was in the bag?
Photos, receipts, journals detailing his crimes.
Oh, my God.
It was a chilling window into the mind of a monster.
So they had him dead to rights at that point.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Faced with this overwhelming evidence, Garavito finally confessed in October 1999, admitting to the murder of around 140 children.
Oh, my God.
It was a confession that shocked the nation and exposed the true depths of his depravity.
Yeah. So you would think that such confession would lead to swift and severe justice.
You would think so. But the legal system, as we often see, is a complex and often frustrating beast.
Yeah, what happened?
So Garavito's sentencing is a prime example of how legal loopholes and technicalities can undermine the pursuit of justice.
Uh-huh.
So despite being initially sentenced to 1,853 years,
Jeez.
the longest sentence in Colombian history,
Wow.
his sentence was drastically reduced
Oh, come on.
due to a series of legal maneuvers and this shockingly lenient good behavior clause.
Are you kidding me?
I know.
That's insane.
I know.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm sure the public outcry was understandable?
Oh, yeah. Victims' families, the Colombian public, felt betrayed by the system.
Yeah.
It was like they were prioritizing the rights of a monster over the memory of his victims.
Yeah. And to make matters worse, Garavito, while incarcerated, spoke of his plans for the future,
I know.
expressing a desire to start a family, to become a preacher, even to enter politics.
Yeah, can you believe that? It's just mind-blowing.
It's insane. So it shows his complete lack of remorse.
Absolutely no remorse.
Yeah.
None whatsoever.
And it raises the question, can individuals like Garavito ever truly be rehabilitated?
That's a question that we're going to continue to explore
Yeah.
as we delve deeper into the broader implications of Garavito's case in our next segment.
So we've been talking about these horrific crimes, right? And it's just unbelievable how someone could do this for over a decade, like traveling all across Colombia, leaving this trail of devastation. How did he get away with it for so long?
Well, I mean, a lot of factors. Think about Colombia back then, late 20th century. Poverty, civil war, drug violence everywhere.
Right, total chaos.
Yeah, law enforcement was completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Resources stretched thin. Focus was on other stuff, more immediate threats.
So it's like the chaos almost provided cover for him.
Exactly. He blended in, moved around undetected. And tragically, think about his victims, too.
Mostly poor kids. Homeless, a lot of them.
Yeah. Their disappearances.
Yeah.
They didn't make big news. Not like if it were kids from richer families, it's awful to say, but they were disposable, like we talked about.
That's such a chilling word. Like, their lives mattered less.
That's the implication. And it's a terrible reflection on society. It makes you think, what kind of a world lets this happen?
Right. Like, whose responsibility is it,
Garavito exploited those societal blind spots. He knew. He knew these kids wouldn't be missed, that no one would really look.
God. Preying on their innocence and on everyone else's indifference.
It's truly sickening. But, like all things, it did eventually come to an end.
Right, the capture. The trial, that must have been huge for Colombia.
It was a real turning point. The whole country had to confront this horror, and it forced them to look at the cracks in the system. The legal system, child protection, everything.
So something good came out of it, at least.
In a way, yeah. The public was outraged, and that pushed the government to actually do something. Laws got stricter, child protection services got more funding, education about child abuse, trying to prevent it, that became more of a priority.
That's something, at least.
Yeah. It shows you, even in the face of such darkness, people can find a way to push for good. But, those changes, they don't erase what happened. That pain's forever.
No, of course not. For the victims, their families, it's just unimaginable.
It's a scar on Colombia, really.
Huh?
And a reminder, right? Evil is out there. We can't ever let our guard down.
Okay. So, stepping back a bit, thinking about this case, it makes you wonder about evil in general. Like, serial killers. Are there warning signs? Things to watch out for?
Well, it's complicated. There's no one-size-fits-all serial killer profile. Different backgrounds, different motives. But there are some common things, yeah.
Like what?
A lot of times there's trauma in their past. Abuse, neglect, stuff that builds up this anger, resentment, And they have trouble with empathy. A lot of them fit the antisocial personality disorder diagnosis.
Right, we talked about that. No regard for rules, no remorse, super manipulative.
Exactly. They're really good at hiding who they are. Charming on the surface, but with these dark things underneath.
And a fascination with violence.
Right. Often, yeah. From a young age, sometimes. Drawn to violent images, stories, cruelty to animals even.
So these are potential red flags. But, you don't want to label every kid who's had a rough time.
Boy, absolutely not. That's really important. Most people who go through tough stuff don't become violent criminals. But knowing these signs, it can help us be more aware, more attuned.
Right. Informed, not afraid.
Yeah. It's about being aware of the nuances, understanding things aren't always black and white.
Okay. So, back to Garavito. One thing that really struck me, he just seemed to have zero remorse. Bragging about the number of victims, talking about wanting to get into politics, work with kids after he got out. What does that say?
It shows a complete lack of empathy. A lot of serial killers.
Yeah.
They see people as objects, things to control. Like their lives don't even matter to them.
It's like a game, almost.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. A game they have to win. And for some, like him, maybe, a sense of pride in it. Like they did something big, important, set them apart.
That's just disturbing. So, the big question, can someone like that be rehabilitated?
That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, nobody really knows. Experts disagree. Therapy, meds. Some people think it can help manage the impulses, but others, they think it's just too deep, too ingrained. They'll never really change.
So we're left not knowing.
Yeah. And that creates a real dilemma. Justice, rehabilitation. How do you balance those things? Do you take the risk? Or do you keep them locked away even if there's a tiny chance they could be different?
No easy answers.
Not at all. It's a heavy decision with huge consequences either way. You got to weigh everything. The crimes, their mental state, the risk. It's a judgment call. Society's safety versus a possibility maybe of them changing.
Man, that's a lot. So, Luis Garavito, the story ends not with closure, but with, a sense of unease, like a reminder of how dark things can get. What are your final thoughts?
It's a stark reminder. Stay vigilant. Protect the vulnerable. Fight injustice. We got to keep working towards a world where this just doesn't happen.
A better world.
Exactly. It's an ongoing fight, and we all have a part to play.
So that's our deep dive into this truly chilling case, a journey into the dark side of humanity. We hope it made you think. What do you take away from this? What can we all do to stop this kind of horror from happening again? It's something we all need to keep asking ourselves, right? To keep kids safe, to make a better future.
Absolutely. We can't afford to forget.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, stay safe and keep asking questions.